Hi, this is Sam Lagana with the Los Angeles Rams. Whose house? You're listening to the Los Angeles Rams UK podcast. Undenied worldwide. The Los Angeles Rams. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go Rams!
Hello and welcome to episode 80. 80 episodes, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to 80 of the LA Rams UK podcast. Chris here to drive things forward for you this week. Joining me is Andy. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, Chris. How are you?
Very good indeed. Very good indeed. Good to have you, my friend. Normal format, we'll presume, ladies and gentlemen, review our 22-10 defeat to the Cowboys at SOFI on Sunday. Look at news and roster changes that we are hearing and coming out of the franchise, and then look forward to our trip on Sunday to Carolina, and anything else that comes up in the meantime we will discuss as we can. So I don't think there's anywhere else we can start except obviously for discussing the game on Sunday, Andy. It wasn't a pretty watch. What were your first thoughts at the end of the game?
To be honest, worried that the offense just could not get anything going. We seem to, defensively, I think we played decently. Apart from one big play with a bunch of missed tackles, I thought defensively we pretty much kept them nil and void. But the offense just seemed to splutter and didn't work. And, you know, by the end of the game, it was looking like, you know, both Cup and Stafford, because of the knocks they're taking and everything else, were just, you know, close to getting injured. And that is obviously a massive worry for this team, that if we lose either of them, our season is basically over and done with.
Very much so, very much so. And Cooper Kupp looks a man dead on his feet at the moment in my eyes. He looks shattered. And him and Stafford seem to, I don't know if they seem to be on a different page all of a sudden on some plays, which again is exactly what we've all been talking about, that they haven't been, and they've obviously been on that same page. But do we feel that there's friction inside maybe some of the coaching rooms?
Yeah, possibly, given the fact that it appeared that can't remember his name, the special teams coordinator and McVay were having an argument on the sidelines when we had the chance for the field goal and decided to punt it and then missed that. They basically punted before they managed to get the timeout. It did look, when they put the cameras to the sideline, that there was, you know, they were arguing and a bit of friction. So, you know, you are beginning to wonder what is going on, you know, behind the scenes. But, you know, you're also wondering, you know, what's going on with the team themselves, because, you know, Stafford doesn't look like the same quarterback that he was last year. It seems to be I think the worst performance I think I've seen out of him since his rookie year, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, and I think you're always going to get that overhang potentially, aren't you? As Super Bowl champions, it's going to happen. I don't think we can hide away from that. And yes, we would all have loved to have seen us. And who says we can't go back and defend that trophy? I think it's going to be a tough ask looking what else is going on around the league this year. However, you're always going to have that slight sort of hangover to it. But for me, there always seems to be that we're forcing plays that. I'm not a big fan of the screen pass, and I've said it on here before. I don't like it, but sometimes it's needed when going down the field isn't working. It's actually just to give the defense on the other side of the ball something different to look at. It felt a little bit too one-dimensional for me on Sunday, where it was quite predictable what was coming next. Don't know what your thoughts on that were, Anne?
Yeah, to be honest, I do agree with you. We do feel very predictable now, and there seems to have been, like I said in a previous episode, doesn't feel like there's been an evolution to the offense. It seems, you know, it's a case of this worked last year, it'll work this year. We'll just carry on with it. And you know, it's clear to see now teams have adjusted to us. Teams are doing things different to, you know, cancel out Cup and to, you know, lock down our other players and to stop our run game, so we can't get, you know, things like the play action going, because they know what's coming straight away. And you know, we keep making these massive, you know, Hollywood pass attempts, you know, these 50-yard bombs downfield, and yet you see it time and time again. There's players open 5, 10, 15 yards. It's a nice, easy check down and just keep the drives going. If nothing else, to give our defense rest, because at the moment they're getting probably burnt out themselves because of how long they're actually spending on the field, because it's free and out, or we're turning the ball over.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Something does need to be done.
Well, that's it, and I think they made a reference to it again on the coverage, which we were obviously the one of the main games and preview game for the late game over here in the UK on Sky Sports, is that Stafford is leading that interception column again across the league, which, yes, he was up there again last year, and obviously we did what we did, but it's not the column you want to be leading in, is it? And the way that we obviously scored the points last week was obviously the one touchdown and a field goal, which, and obviously we'll discuss the miss as well, but it was the fact that we felt like we got that slight momentum when we actually did score, and then we give it away a silly play straight away. And it just feels like there's no momentum to the way that we're playing at the moment. When you looked at us last year, we would score and then bang, we'd score again, bang, we'd score again. And there just doesn't feel that is that way at the moment, that they can actually continue it going forward. It feels like, right, we've done that now, take a step back. We need to put feet on throat, and that just doesn't feel like that killer instinct is there anymore for me.
No, I agree with you. It doesn't feel like that is there anymore. Last year we'd be up by half and that was it. Apart from one game, we'd basically be cruising the second half. And This year we're not. We just seem to be plodding along and just don't seem to be. And even when we're down in plays, there doesn't seem to be any urgency to the offensive. Right, let's go. Maybe bang, 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 and just keep hitting them hard. Quick plays, quick everything. Keep their defense. It seems to be, we'll wind the clock down. Oh, it's gone to 0. Quickly snap it and then throw it, which has given the defenses plenty of time to make adjustments to us. It just feels like everything is so lethargic. And going back to what I said a few weeks ago, I'm wondering if maybe because they've done it and they're like, yeah, I did the Super Bowl on my first year and everything's great and wonderful and rosy, that all the pressure's off and it's just sort of feels like at times it's almost like that's now going through the motions rather than actually, there's no drive or competitiveness to win games. It's just, I'm here, I've got and that's it. And, oh, we've lost. Oh, well, move on to next week. It just doesn't feel right.
And there was some good things that came out of the game, which we'll go through in a bit. And I feel like that we don't want to be too doom and gloom. Yes, we're 2-3. It could be a hell of a lot worse. And there's other teams in the league that are in a worse position than we are. Don't get me wrong. And we're still in the divisional hunt. We are, but we only can obviously speak about what we see in front of us. And what you've said to me, and what is the main aspect for me that gets us in that position that we've always got to, and especially last year, is the rushing game. I'm a fan of Akers. I think there's a player there. But on Sunday, his decision-making for me was really, really poor. And I don't know if that's his fault that he wasn't seeing the gaps, or if it's the way that the play was designed. It could be a cumulative of everything. But I just thought the rushing game just wasn't... It just looked so disjointed. And actually, the amount of negative yards that we were getting on rushing, unfortunately, that's the reason why we have to go then to the throw, because there's just no other way of passing. You got to take the passing game because the running game's not there.
Yeah, I have previously said with regards to Akers, my issue with him seems to be this is how it's schemed up, and he just puts his head down and runs, and he sometimes doesn't look up and go, right, okay, that lane's been closed down that I'm supposed to go through, but if I just shift over, slightly to the left or right, there is an open lane and I can bounce it onto that outside. And he does seem to be. One thing I did notice a lot he seems to keep running into the back of his own players time and time again. And, like I've said before, people are pretty much writing Akers off. I'm not writing him off. There is, as you said, there is something I feel still there. It just feels like either he needs to, he came out earlier on in the season. I'm not, he's got to put his head down and work. I get that, but it doesn't feel now at the moment like he is. It just feels like he's just another one that's just going through the motions. And whether or not, because he came back off that injury, I still say he came back too soon. He shouldn't have played the off season at all. He should have been, you're done for the year, to make sure. So I'm wondering maybe if there's a little bit of still not 100% because he came back so quickly. His injuries never fully healed, because he doesn't feel like, when he first came in, he's one of them. He had a quick burst and go, and he doesn't seem to have that burst anymore.
No.
So it does worry me that either the injuries just took that burst away, or he's just not ever got 100% healthy to have that burst.
And an Achilles injury, that's what it can do.
Yeah, it can do that. Yeah,
and you've seen that from, obviously, we watch football over here in the UK. If someone picks up an Achilles injury, that slight turn of pace is well, there's two things really. They either lose the pace because they're actually still in pain, or they're worried it's going to go again. And that, like you say, if he came back too soon, that subconscious, he may be fully fit, but in his head, and he may not even realize he's thinking that way. That might be the reason behind it. So what it feels as well to me as well, that you've obviously got Henderson there, but he wasn't used really as a great deal. I think he might not have even been there. But using Cup again as a jet sweep, I think it's now, again, as I said before, it's predictable.
Yeah.
Cup is always moving across, so there's going to be man on man. So I just feel that McVeigh is, what a coach. He's won us the Super Bowl, don't get me wrong, but for sometimes he's so, excuse me, I don't like swearing on this podcast, and we shouldn't, but he's so bloody stubborn that he doesn't see, and I don't think he's one of them that likes being, well, you said it before about the discussion that he's had with the special teams coach on the touchline. I don't think he's a person that actually likes someone telling him else that he's wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like it needs that at the minute.
Yeah, he does. I think we had this, was it last season? I think we were having this discussion that maybe he needs a more senior person still over him in reality to help in certain aspects. And he didn't like that, with Wade Phillips. That's why Wade Phillips maybe went, because he didn't like having that senior guy over him. And you do think, is there a little chip? But, I think it's something we've always said about McVeigh, is it seems to be he has plan A. There doesn't always seem to be a plan B with him. It's This is it, and this is how it's going to be. And we don't seem to do, apart from, it took us a while last year when we had, the no wins, and then we sort of came back after, the bye and everything. We did make a few adjustments, but it seems to be few and far between, and he never seems to make many in-game adjustments. It's just, right, this is the game plan this week, we're going to go with it. It will work or it doesn't work. Where some other coaches would be like, come to, even to half, right, okay, this isn't working, so instead of doing X, Y, Z, we'll do A, B, C, and let's see what happens.
And I think you sort of hit the tail. I can't even speak at the minute. The nail on the head there for a couple of things with me there is that I always feel like we come back after the half time at the moment, and I'm worried that we're going to concede straight away. That just seems to be that I'm not quite sure what's being said in the locker room in between, and it'd be very interesting. We see it obviously when they're handing out winning balls. What happens in that locker room? I would very much like to see if they'd show the footage what happened at halftime once upon a time. That'd be quite interesting. But it's also that, like you say, the in-game decision making. It's just not there, is it? And that maybe even the seniority of some of the players that are on the field have kind of got to look on themselves to obviously try and make the changes as well. And obviously, I appreciate they've obviously got to follow the coach's scheme, but it's just the intensity needs to be there across the board. And you also mentioned there about the bye week. Do you feel it's now, let's get to the bye week and see where we are, rather than let's push to the bye week?
Yeah, I think we said it last week. I think the bye week, maybe now having an early bye week, may be helpful for us to maybe make some adjustments, make some changes. Hopefully, maybe get a couple of players back who are injured at the moment to maybe shore up the team. I think Van Jefferson from now is eligible to go, and we believe, hopefully, that come the bye week, he'll come off injured reserve and be potentially available to go, which maybe will give us that little bit extra on the offense. I think, I think Bryson Hopkins finishes his suspension, so he'll be back as well. So it will give us a few more options that we can sort of maybe make some changes with, or just get first team personnel back to the squad to maybe try and help. I think Brian Allen's another one. He may be back by that point as well. So I think it's just a case now, as we say, just limp through, get to there, maybe see if we can make some adjustments, make some changes. I think we're lucky that the trade market is still open. I don't expect us to make many trades, but we can never say never with this team. There are maybe a couple of offensive linemen. They're not going to be world-class superstars, but we could potentially maybe poach one or two away from another team if we're in that position where we feel we really must do it, to maybe try and help. Because the biggest issue for me, and it still is we can't have our offensive line giving up 7 sacks or wherever it was and 11 quarterback hits in a game. You just can't do that because as we saw, Stafford was injured. Just luckily that he's a stubborn old geezer that will will play through the pain and keep going, no matter what. But how long before, with the amount of knocks he's taken, and it's not as if it's one game and then he's okay. It's week in, week out now before it's a case of something major happens to him, and it doesn't have to be a concussion. It seems to be a big thing in the league at the moment. The way he's getting slammed to the deck sometimes, you're sort of like, wow, that could, he could seriously end up with something like that. And like I say, if that happens, we're relying, on Wolford or the other, I can't remember his name. Is it Hopkins? I think is the other one.
And
to step up.
It's that whole situation at the moment as well, is where it just feels like stuff isn't working. Now I'm just looking at the stats in the game. Passing yards, we were actually 90 yards more, or total yards, 90 yards more, because obviously we had the long passing touchdowns, and everything else. They obviously we got absolutely smashed on rushing yards, which we've kind of touched on with the Cowboys 163 yards to our 38 yards in total game. But when you actually look down the team stats even more first downs by 4, third down efficiency was pretty much the same. Fourth down efficiency, 1 out of 1, we'll come on to that in a second. We had more total plays. Yes, Stafford was sacked 5 times. We got the 3 sacks, but we had less penalties, but we actually had the ball longer. Now, there was only a minute in it across the game, but it's not like we're being completely outplayed and we haven't got ball in hand. It just feels like that spark and that click has just disappeared. And I think the bye week, like you say, can be. We're obviously in Carolina this weekend, but that bye week has got to be some serious work being done, I think.
Oh yeah, I'd say the bye week is going to have to be. They're going to have to come back in, sit down, get things sorted out, and make adjustments. We don't have many draft picks, but you're kind of hoping that maybe we could pick somebody up, or hopefully, maybe players in house can maybe step up and get better. It's a big ask, but you sort of, something has to change, because otherwise we could be done in a few weeks' time and our season may as well be over. And then we're then getting to the point of where people are going to start being like, well, where do we move on from here? Is it a case of, right, we have to rip it down and restart, or because we are getting to that point where that discussion is going to have to come up at some point because of a draft situation, the cap situation. At some point that conversation has to happen, unfortunately.
And yes, we are being a bit doom and gloom and a little bit extreme. However, I think these discussions have got to be had, because what we see on the field isn't what we're used to, which is a nice place to be as a Rams fan. That we are not, we're not happy with mediocre anymore, and so it's a good place to be. So I said obviously in there there was a fourth down efficiency. I think the one sort of positive that came out of that was that we saw a passing fourth down positive yards with a throw from our punter, Mr. Dixon. Andy, when you saw that happening, did you have your heart in your mouth?
Yes, I did. And again, I don't want to be negative, but it was like a desperation play. It just felt like a desperation play. Nothing else is working. We've got to, this felt like the Rams a few years ago when we were struggling and we had to do these razzle dazzle plays to try and get yards. It just felt like that again. We were back in that situation. But I also do wonder if maybe it was our special teams coordinator, because obviously Bones was on the other side for the Cowboys, as if it was like a stick two fingers up at the guy and go, yeah, we can still do this.
I think there was definitely something in that.
Yeah, whether it was McVay or...
And I did notice, and he will. John Foster's on the other side of the ball. He was celebrating some serious with the blocked punt. There was a serious celebration from him, which fair dues to him. He's on a different franchise. That's your job. That's what you're going to do. But I think you're right there. I think it was a very much let's see who's on that other side of the field and let's throw in a fake punt, and it worked. And I reckon he would have. He seems the kind of guy that would have donned the cap and gone, okay, I'll tip my cap to that one. Fair dues to you.
Yeah, he does seem that sort of guy, But like I say, it just felt, to me like it was like, it's that desperation plays that we used to have where nothing else is working. We have to try the razzle dazzle to make it, to just try and get some yards.
Yeah.
But, it's also ironic that the person that caught it basically had as many yards as a certain other player who I'm sure we'll come to mention at some point, because I think he's been the talk all this week. Basically it's the same amount of yards as he did, which is, kind of a little bit worrying.
Well, we'll go into it. Please carry on.
Yeah, obviously, Jake Gervais in that one catch for 12 yards basically had as many yards as Allen Robinson did in the whole game. 3 catches for 12 yards. And obviously a lot of people are starting to question his signing and, was he worth it? And I have been pretty defensive for the guy and saying, it's early days. He may still be trying to gel with the team. It took Beckham a few weeks to get accustomed to the squad. It took Von Miller when he came in a few weeks to get used to, but we're heading into week 6 now. You're starting to think, something more should be happening by this point. There should be
I agree.
But whether or not, as people have said, he's not getting, Stafford's not getting that time to get to his second and third reads, because of how quickly he's getting, he's got players on top of him, there's loads that could come into it, but it's just disappointing that, okay, well, we know they're going to mark out Cup, so make Robinson read 1 and Cup read 2. So
and I think that is exactly. I think you've definitely hit it there. Is that should now, if you want to bring this lad into the fold and he's as good as we've seen previously, I think you're exactly right there. You've got to start designing plays so it hits him in the numbers, and then he can move forward with it. Rather than, I do feel sometimes, and I don't know if it's him, I don't know if it's the way that Stafford throws the ball to him, but he always seems to be on the stretch. And I don't know if that's just him not getting to his mark or what, but it never seems to hit him in the numbers. He always seems to be stretching for it, or he's having to fight for it. I don't know if that's just the way he plays the game. I don't know. But I think you're right. I think we need to start designing plays for him, which will then free up Cup as a secondary, which will then mix up the offense, which can only be a benefit, I think.
I do think some of that is Stafford's throw. We have mentioned previously, we feel something's not quite right with his mechanics because he is sailing balls and putting them well over, where he shouldn't be putting them. We've noticed it time and time again. He's underthrown, he's overthrown, he's,
And he can drop the dimes, don't get me wrong. That pass to Atwell was unreal.
Yeah, but, we seem to, we did mention it a couple of weeks ago, he seems to, and this is harking back to the, pre-season with this, elbow injury surgery talk. I think you think, is he again 100% fit and healthy? Because we all have noticed his passing doesn't seem to be, last year, he had some errant throws, but, 80% of his passes were bang where the receiver wanted him. This year, it seems to be like 40% of his passes are bang where you want them, and 60% are all sailing all over the place. So I say it does feel like there is a bit on Stafford as well, that his passing's just not up to speed and up to where we expect it to be. And as you say, whether that's he's not 100% himself with his elbow or anything, or
Well, I think you touched on it briefly before, didn't you? Obviously, the O-line, it was our 5th different combination on the O-line this season in 5 games. We are struggling, obviously, on the injuries on that. It's very well documented. We'll come on to, obviously, roster changes in a few moments. But like you said before, he isn't getting the opportunity to get to those second and third reads because there's players on top of him. Micah Parsons has been voted today as the Defensive Player of the Week. The guy was on one leg for pretty much half of that game, if not more than half of that game. Yes, he's a phenomenal talent. However, for him to get that, for me, I would, if I was that coach, if that defensive coach now, tomorrow morning, I would stick his picture up in the coach's room and say, that guy beat you on one leg. Discuss. What are you going to do, fellas?
Yeah, exactly. What annoyed me more than anything else is it wasn't as if he was getting lined up against, one of the, undrafted rookies who were in the middle. He was lining up against Rob Havenstein, who is supposedly our best player out of the whole line. And he was just making it look like Havenstein at times may as well have not have been there, because he was just coming around him like he didn't even exist. And, I think I called it even on the Discord on a couple of them. I was like, what, is it me, or does Havenstein just look like he just isn't interested? He's just like, oh, he's gone past me, whatever. Oh, I'll just stand there. He wasn't even getting hands on him. He was just like, yeah, he's gone past me. I don't care. It really, for the guy who's now supposed to be, the veteran of the line, and is supposed to be, our best player. To be honest, he looked like one of our worst players against him. And I know he's going against, as we said, Micah Parsons is a unique, rare talent, but you would expect him to at least, look like he wants to make an effort, and he just didn't seem to. Like I say, it was probably one of the worst performances from Havenstein I've ever seen him put on for us.
No,
if your best players aren't playing well for you, your worst players are going to struggle.
Yeah, very much. And like I say, it's there's players that are missing in there. Obviously, we're fully aware of that, and we need to get those players back, and we need to understand what is our strongest O-line this season, which potentially we may see in the next weeks, and the bye week may help us out again with that. We obviously keep mentioning that. On the other side of the ball, AD, 2 sacks again, was doing his roughage best, but when you double team, triple team most plays, how he still gets those 2 sacks, I don't know. The Jalen Ramsey sack I liked, because again, it was a bit of a mix-up, and he completely nailed his run on that one. I thought it was very good. But we didn't really let them... Do you know what I mean? They didn't really score a great deal. They obviously had 1 rushing touchdown. They had the defensive, obviously, the interception to making a touchdown. The rest were field goals. So the defense are doing their job, theoretically, of stopping them from scoring. They never scored a touchdown in the second half.
Yeah.
We just need to do more on the second, on the other side of the ball, isn't it?
Yeah, apart from one stupid play for that, for the Russian touchdown, which, you do have to put, we had plenty of time to get that guy down, and everybody missed them. Even some players we expect to be able to tackle, like Bobby Wagner, a whole lot of them missed. We didn't really put a foot wrong. We just got on with it. We seemed to do the job we needed to do. On defense, it was just, like I say, we can't really fault the defense. Yeah, they should be tackling better and everything else. But, when you're only giving up, basically 1 touchdown and, 3 field goals, you would expect your offense to be able to win those sorts of games.
Yeah.
And, they're not. But, AD just did what AD does. I did say, people were questioning at the beginning of the season, he's not done anything. I'm like, give the guy a chance. He seems to be one of those guys he takes 3, 4, 5 weeks before he starts. If you look throughout statistically, the first few weeks, month of the year of the season, he doesn't do much, and then all of a sudden, come week after the first month, it seems to be that's it, and then that's where he gets all his sacks. He did that this week. 2 sacks. And everything and a tackle for loss. What we want him to do, but yeah, the only thing I will question is I'm still not happy with Leonard Floyd. That guy is on a big contract to play alongside Aaron Donald, to be one-on-one with guys, and he doesn't seem to be doing anything.
No, he's not. He's pretty non-existent at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're then relying on, Jalen Ramsey rushing off, getting the sacks. That should be his job. That's what we're paying him big money for. And, when we signed him to that contract, I was like, we've made a mistake there. He's never going to be. He had one good season, but it was, as we've seen time and time again, with loads of players, Dante Fowler and everybody else, it's the Aaron Donald effect. You walk away from Aaron Donald, and all of a sudden these players, don't do anything. And I think Leonard Floyd is the same. He had that one good year because he wanted to get paid. He's got paid, and then he's gone back to how he was for the first 4 years of his career of not doing anything. But you do expect him. I'd love for him to step up, but I just don't feel it anymore that he's. And to be honest, in hindsight, I'd have cut him to keep Miller personally, if we could have done.
Well, that's it. Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. I think he does need to show up. I was watching a couple. You sort of key in, don't you? And you sort of watch certain players on certain plays, and he was one that I was definitely keeping an eye on as we go through, thinking you've got to do more to get through the coverage to get to the quarterback. Now, that was their second string quarterback. We should have been putting him under more pressure. Simple as that.
Yeah.
But their O-line played very well. They protected him very well. I think the Cowboys are a decent team this year. I do, and obviously with what he's done coming in with Dak being out injured, I think it's actually a superb effort from them, really. And they're going to be up there, aren't they?
Yeah, he's the one of those teams that is going to be around, especially with their division as well. They do have, some easy games, but these are games that we should be winning. If you look at us on paper, man to man, they have a good defense, but there's questions on their offense. Our defense did the job to their offense and basically kept them quiet. On the whole, we kept the likes of, CD Lamb, Michael Gallup. We kept those players quiet.
Yeah.
Really outside of, that big run by Tony Pollard, we kept Elliott to under 4 yards, a carry, which is, that's what you want to do. If you can keep a running back to under 4 yards a carry, your defense is doing a decent job. So everything looked good. It was just a case of.
Well, I think with that franchise, I think you've seen from obviously the run that Pollard made against us, which you'd like to say our defense are up there with one of the better defenses in the league, and the numbers potentially say that on rights and wrongs sometimes. But I think he is definitely the running back that's going to take that franchise and the Cowboys further into the playoffs this season, because I think Zeke is definitely not the man he used to be. As we're seeing with our own players, that yes, the pinnacle of some NFL players drops very, very quickly.
Yeah, especially at the running back position because of how quickly and easy it is, a few injuries and that, and that's it. It's their careers are pretty much over. That's why a lot of people say you don't pay the running back his second contract because it ain't worth it.
Yeah.
You can get one in the draft. Or, if you need to pick one up, you can pick there's loads of them out there in free agency just sitting there.
Definitely.
Waiting.
Anything else that is on your mind in that one before we move on, Andy?
I suppose the only other thing was it was quite surprising actually to see Matt Gay miss a field goal. He's been fairly reliable. He sort of, out of everything that happens, you always felt Matt Gay was at least, Mr. Reliable and could get on with the job. It was quite a shock to see him. And then obviously, the arguments on the sideline that we said earlier. Personally, I'd have gone for the field. I wouldn't have bothered punted for what it was worth, we may as well have. Yeah, okay, it would have been a long kick for him, but he has the leg to do it. I think we've all seen that. Give the guy a chance. So what if you're giving him it on the 50-yard line? Is it really making that much difference when we're already losing? You may as well take that chance. Maybe that could have been a spark to maybe get us back in this game if you'd have made it. So that's about it, really, I think, for me.
No, definitely. And here's the episode name for you, ladies and gentlemen. We lose the showdown at the SOFI saloon, but we move on to next week. Yeah. Before we talk about, obviously, the game in Carolina, news coming out of the franchise, Andy, there's been a change in the roster. We are activating a former Raven from the practice squad.
Yeah, we're bringing in Matt Score. He's been promoted to the active roster off the practice squad. I think it's something that we needed to do. And to be honest, I think he was activated last week for the Cowboys game, but we just never used him, which, to be honest, shocked me a little bit. But don't get me wrong, he's not no star player, but I think he can offer us something that other players aren't, and he also has that flexibility. Although he's down primarily as a centre, he did in college play all across the interior of the offensive line. So hopefully, he can fit in somewhere. Maybe he's going to be there to replace. I would imagine he's going to be Edwards' replacement, because Bobby Evans just isn't it for me. I had high hopes for the lad coming out, but he's a liability when he's out there. So it will either be Shelton, I would imagine, would slide back to guard and he'll come into centre, or they'll leave Shelton where he is at centre and push him out to the guards. And then obviously we've also the Jake Funk experiment is over. He's now left the squad. He's been basically waived with no recall to the team, and obviously, as we've probably heard, David Edwards is on IR, so it's going to be at least a minimum of 4 weeks before he could even think of coming back.
Yeah, which is a shame. And there's potentially one other name that's being bundled around socials in the last 24, 48 hours, which never seems to be away from anybody else. Mr. OBJ has been speaking about potential conversations.
Yeah, I think that's just whether or not that's just him trying to maybe squeeze an extra few bucks out.
Bitcoins.
Yeah, I believe he was supposed to be at Buffalo, was it yesterday or today, for a visit. So, but I did say this on Sunday. I was quickly looking back through the Discord, and I did actually, when we were having the Discord chat during the game, and I did actually say, at this rate, OBJ won't want to come back to us because of how poorly we're playing. Well, and I'm beginning to wonder if that's the case. He's doing this now because he doesn't want to come back, because he's like, you ain't got a chance of winning this Super Bowl. I'd rather go to someone like Buffalo who's competing,
That's interesting. I was sort of looking at it that way. Would you want to come to it? But actually looking at it, I could be the one to make the difference.
Yeah.
And he seems like that kind of person that would want to be the ones that make the difference, if that makes sense.
I think he may be looking at it, though.
He's
not likely to be active until at least November. Our season could be over by then. So it could be he's looking at that. He's thinking, you ain't going to get there in November. I'm not. What's the point of me coming when I could probably go to, like I say, somewhere like Buffalo and, pretty much bar a complete disaster, they're guaranteed the playoffs. So, I do think there's a bit of both ways on this one, but we'll just...
The NFL's a funny place.
Yeah, and I've said before, at the end of the day, at the moment, we have more important needs on that team that need to be filled. I'd rather whatever money we were spending on OBJ, spend it on the O-line. Get somebody in on the O-line to help that team out. That is more pressing, because you can have the best wide receivers, everything in the league. If your O-line is completely rubbish, it doesn't matter, because as we're seeing at the moment, your quarterback can't play. He can't do, the team just can't do anything. So,
no, I think you're completely right. That makes definite sense, that to me. Okay, so this week we are in Carolina, who have got their own issues. What have you seen of them so far this season that you like and could potentially like from them, and actually where we can actually attack it, Andy?
To be honest, as much as I know that I think they're 1-5 at the moment, their defense can cause us problems. They have some good pass rushers. Brian Burns, has the potential. I don't think he's just never quite cracked it. But against our O-line, it could be his breakout game of the season if they play like they did the other night. Derek Brown's decent. Matt Ioannidis, he's a veteran. We've seen what he can do over the years with the Washington team. What's it, the Commanders now? They keep changing the name every 5 minutes. They've got Shaq Thompson. They've got other players in the back, on their secondary. And then obviously we've got a couple of our own ex-players coming back. We've got Austin Corbett coming back for them on the O-line. And then obviously the man himself, Johnny Hecker, is back in the clubhouse this week because he's now on their team. But
which will be interesting to see if he wants to make a throw on fourth down.
Yeah, obviously, as it stands at the moment, providing obviously you never know what's going to happen in the league between now and then, and game day, at the moment it looks like PJ Walker, XFL former MVP, is going to be their starting quarterback due to the fact I think Mayfield is basically, I think they've said now he's out, although he's still questionable. They don't expect him to play because he's still in a leg brace. And then obviously Sam Darnold's on IR, and the other lad they drafted, Matt Corral's also on IR. So at the moment, he's their only quarterback on their roster. But then obviously you do have to factor in Christian McCaffrey. Again, he's not the same player that he was a few years ago before all these injuries. I don't think he's quite but he is still a massive threat out that backfield, catching more than a running back. To be honest, it's his catching ability out the backfield that is the big issue for us.
And I think that could be their way through this game. Is C-Mac is definitely going to be their target man, I think. And if they've obviously got a quarterback in there, which they've got no other choice, but you'd get the ball out of his hand as quickly as possible with either using it on the ground or playing quick slide passes or screen passes to actually get it in McCaffrey's hand sooner rather than later. I think that's what you will see a lot of this week, and that's my prediction from them. So anyways, I don't think, and I might be wrong, I don't think you're going to see a lot of balls coming over the top of Ramsey's head, basically.
No, I can't see it myself. The only other threat from PJ Walker, in fairness, is the guy is quite mobile. He sort of reminds me a bit of what's his name, Tyler Huntley, the backup for the Ravens. He can move about. He's not Lamar Jackson thing, but he has got a good set of wheels on him, and he can get out of that pocket and make some plays with his feet as well. So obviously we do have to be careful that they could factor in making him part of their running game, maybe catching us out that way. And then obviously that they've just sacked their head coach. So we all know teams, when they've sacked the head coach, seem to 9 out of 10 times they win the next couple of games, because they seem to, obviously, I believe from what I've read behind the scenes, a lot of players did not like Matt Rule. They were not happy with him anymore. So obviously they weren't playing particularly well for him. So sometimes that kick in the backside of for them of fight, he's gone now. We don't have
it
to
always seems the way in any kind of sport is when the manager leaves, the team starts to perform, which it really annoys me on sometimes, because you're like, well, why didn't you perform when he was in the job, for crying out loud?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just it happens in all sport. It doesn't matter where you are, doesn't it? As soon as the manager disappears, when it always falls on his head, the team turns up. And why does it always have to be us that then plays them?
Yeah,
we were. I was here on the pod I was on before, and we were talking about the game before we played San Francisco. Jimmy G was always going to have that game against us, because he does.
Yeah, it was just inevitable.
And you've just got that horrible sinking feeling that we're going to see it potentially again on Sunday. I hope we don't. I don't actually have the predictions in front of me of what we all predicted for this one, but I'm going to go on the edge of where I want to go, obviously, as a win, but it feels that could be coming.
It feels like it's that, but the way we're playing at the moment, it feels like it's that banana skin game that we just won't get nothing going again.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with you, but I think the only other thing really I think to note of them is obviously it's Steve Wilkes, who's took over, who was the former Cardinals coach for a year. But obviously he's more of a defensive mind, so it'll be it'll be an interesting matchup.
Well, that's it. He's going to know of us because of that rivalry previously, and he will understand who we are and how we play the game. And yeah, like I was saying before, I think the one-dimensional side of Blair's Cup has got to be slightly different. They are a 1-in-5 team. They've had some close games. They've had some big scoring games. They've had some serious points put up against them as well.
Yeah.
So we've got to go at this game remembering that we should be favourites rather than how can we get through it and get through it close. We've got to think we are the Super Bowl champions. We've got that on our chest. Let's go in here and actually smash this team and actually show them that they were right to sack their manager rather than actually it was the players that should have just turned up for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. This should be I think if we did have the predictions in front of us, I think the majority of us would have had this marked down as a big fat W, because we do expect us to win this game. This should be one of those games that should be in reality probably over by half time, and we're just cruising through the second half, and by the end of by the fourth quarter we're bringing in the backups because we're so far comfortable. But like we say, at the moment it just doesn't feel like that's going to be the case.
No, definitely not. And obviously we're travelling across country, which sometimes is always a bit interesting for
I believe it's at SOFI, isn't it?
As far as I'm aware, I thought it was I might be wrong.
Pretty certain the Carolina game is at SOFI. I might be wrong.
Who knows? We're playing wherever. No, I think I'm wrong, as per usual.
Yeah, it is SOFI.
It is SOFI. That's my wrong. So I've been saying that we've been going to Carolina, but they're coming to us.
Yeah.
Shows that I can't read.
Yeah. That's all right, mate.
But no, So what would you have put a scoreline on the page? What would you say, Andy?
Beforehand, I'd have obviously said we'd have put 30 points on them. Maybe they'd have 30-10, to be honest.
30-10, okay.
Yeah, I really do think because of the injuries they've got, that they're basically playing. That's what I would expect. Before last week's game, but at the moment, it's either going to be one of them games where we're going to blow them out and we're going to be comfortable, or it's going to be literally, down to a field goal. I think it's going to be one of those two games. Whoever's got the ball in their hands last is basically going to win this game. It just has that feel into that game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's definitely got that kind of feel about it. I think it's definitely going to be I would have probably agreed with you before, and everything you said there, a win, a convincing win. But I think it's going to be a 2-minute drill going in the final quarter. I think that's just how it's going to be. And I think it's not going to be an easy watch either. I think it's going to be quite messy. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we blow them out and really show up. But I think it's going to be quite a lot of 3 and outs. I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and I just don't see how we can get out of that at the present moment in time. It's just the way it is. But we've got to get through this game, and I think if we can get through this game with a win, and to go into the bye week 3-3, I think you've got to look at that as like that's your full-on reset.
Yeah.
To go in 2-4 is quite a bit more of negativity, which I think has got to be one of the main things that they've got to be saying in those coaching rooms over the next couple of days. Is we've got to go into the bye week 3-3, and we start from 0.
Yeah, basically, especially with how tight our division is. Even the Seahawks, who we were expecting to be, competing for the number 1 spot.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which Geno Smith they've ended up with, if I'm honest.
I know, to be brutally honest, I was expecting them to have, binned him by now and playing quarterback roulette week in, week out. But he seems to have, so every team still in the division has a chance. And if you're 2-4 at the bye, you're starting to worry. I think that's the biggest thing. If we can't win this game, at least if we go in 500, as you say, into the bye week, fans will feel a lot more comfortable than it being 2 and 4, and then the panic sets in.
Yeah.
You know.
Completely agree. Apologies for getting the fixture the wrong way around, ladies and gentlemen. You have to excuse us English. We have to try and remember it's the wrong way around because we put it the other way.
Yeah.
So got myself confused there. Schoolboy error. But we go into the game. It is a 9:05 kickoff over here in the UK, 1:05. In the States, we are obviously not the Sky game that's been picked up over here due to the kickoff time. So it will be on Game Pass, ladies and gentlemen, which most people are probably happy with because we get to see the American adverts, and that's probably the best thing about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not too sure. I'm normally like, I've not long had my dinner, and then I'm seeing all these food adverts, and I'm like, I'm hungry again now. I need to, my waistline's not going to take all season, I think, if this carries on.
But no, thank you very much, Andy. How can I put it? In depth as ever is probably the way I'll put you, my friend.
Yep, no worries. Glad to be on. And glad to be
good
doing
stuff.
it again.
We will obviously be back next week to discuss, obviously, and go through the Panthers game. And then obviously we'll may have a week off. We may do a little bit in between, obviously, with the bye. We'll see how we go. But we are then, obviously, after the bye week, back at SOFI against the Niners once again. So that'll be an interesting discussion as we go from there. So, no, Andy, nice to have you on, mate. Good to speak.
Yep, you as well, Chris. Nice to have you on. And like I say, hopefully next week we'll be a little bit happier discussing a W, and all our problems may be feeling like a little bit further away than they were this week.
Definitely. Good to speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, stay safe. Speak to you all soon.